Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is Straight Outta Boston here, aka the King of Boston. Today we're back for something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a bit of a World Series prediction podcast here. And I got my good buddy Max. He is a subscriber. I talked to him before. Really nice guy. He has a YouTube channel of his own. Check it out in the description. He'll be talking about the second half of the podcast. He comes in around the 16.5 minute mark, probably a little bit past that. I'm going to be breaking down the Boston Red Sox, then touching on the St. Louis Cardinals a little bit. He's going to be doing the exact opposite. He'll be talking about the Cardinals, breaking down that team, and then, touching on the Red Sox a little bit too. We'll both make predictions, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. He's a really insightful guy. He knows what he's talking about. I'm going to be talking for the first half, but I really suggest you guys stick around and listen to him. His mic quality is a little bit off, but if you guys can handle it, I really suggest you listen to what he's saying. He really knows his stuff. So, anyway, without further ado, let's do it. So let's get things started with a bit of a recap for the 2013 Boston Red Sox season. They got off to a red-hot start after sweeping the Yankees in New York to start out the season. They went 18-8 in April, before going 15-15, stumbling a bit in May, but never looking back from there, finishing anywhere between 4 and 7 games above 500 each month for the rest of the season. They're one of the more consistent teams in baseball, never losing more than 3 in a row. Very impressive stat right there. Only team to do that in this year's Major League Baseball season. And they did suffer a few injuries along the way. Victorino was banged up throughout the year with hamstring injuries and thumb injuries. Dustin Pedroia tore the UCL in his thumb on opening day, but he's played through it ever since, has not missed a game. Ortiz missed the first 20-ish games of the year due to an Achilles injury. But other than that, no major injuries outside of Andrew Bailey and Joel Hanrahan, who did both go down towards the beginning of the year. But that might have been a blessing in disguise, as if those guys don't go down, we probably don't see the emergence of one of the, if not the best closers in the major leagues right now at this point, Koji Uehara, as well as the emergence of Craig Breslow and Junichi Tozawa as very good 7th and 8th inning men. Now, the only big deals that the Red Sox made throughout the season were acquiring Matt Thornton for Brandon Jacobs in early July, I believe that was. They also acquired Jake Peavy in a 3-way trade that involved them giving up Jose Iglesias among a couple other lower A-ball prospects. And they also did trade for Quentin Berry. I believe they just traded cash for him from the Kansas City Royals, but he's proved to be a big part of this postseason roster, so he's pretty much the designated pinch runner off of the bench. They finished the season off clinching a playoff spot at September 19th and clinching the division the following day on Friday, September 20th against the Toronto Blue Jays. They've had a strong postseason so far, going 7-3, taking the LDS against Tampa in 4, and then taking the LCS against Detroit in 6. And they will have home field advantage for this World Series due to the AL, I should say, winning the All-Star game. So we'll get into our team breakdowns right now. I'll start out with the Boston Red Sox. The starting rotation has been pretty solid throughout the year. I think what this team lacks is a true ace. And although John Lester has really emerged as that ace at the end of the year, it's still, they do not have the Max Scherzers or the Justin Verlanders of the world. They don't have the Adam Wainwrights or the David Prices of the world. They kind of have a lot of 2 to 3 to 4 type pitchers, and that could come back to bite them. I personally thought it was going to bite them in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, but luckily they've gotten by without one. I think if Lester continues to pitch how he has in the playoffs, I think they'll be fine. And I think that Lester can be a true ace. I do believe that he was somewhat injured during the middle of the year. They did give him 8 days in between starts at one point, and I think since then he's had like a sub-3 ERA. So I think giving him that little bit of extra rest maybe helped him get over his somewhat minor injury, at least is my guess. But after that, you got Clay Buchholz. He was very good to start out the year. He finished 12-1 after starting out 11-0, he started at 9-0, I think, but he ended up getting hurt. And as only Clay Buchholz can do, he missed 3 months of the season, 82 games, just about half the year. And it's been tough. He's never been the same pitcher since. He hasn't built back up his arm strength. He consistently breaks down after 80 to 85 pitches. If you look at his 3 playoff starts now, or his 2 playoff starts, it's his 3 playoff starts. He's consistently fallen apart in the 5th and 6th innings. So we'll see if he can kind of right the ship here in the World Series, as they might need it. He looks like a potential matchup against Joe Kelly, who has looked very good so far in the postseason. But nonetheless, after that, or I should say before that, we have John Lackey, who's likely going to be the number 2 pitcher. He was the number 3 pitcher in the LCS, but he started Game 2 in the LDS, so they flip-flopped him at Buchholz. But I'm sure I'd put my money on Lackey coming back as the number 2 starter. But he had a very, very strong comeback season after having Tommy John surgery in 2012. He was a really big disappointment throughout his first 2 years of his 5-year deal with the Boston Red Sox, but he's come back better than ever, really, it seems. He had a phenomenal season, tailed off a little bit at the end, and don't let that record fool you. He had a very, very good season, just never seemed to get the run support. He went something like 0-8 or something in games where he didn't get more than 2 runs, and that really affected his record. But other than that, he has been phenomenal. He's been a great, great pitcher for the team. He was the ace of the staff at times when Lester was struggling, Buchholz was out. It was him and Dubron really leading the staff, but both those guys fell apart a little bit at the end. Lackey, however, had a dominant performance against Justin Verlander and the Tigers in the LCS. He struggled a little bit when he pitched Game 2 of the LDS, but they ended up winning that game. They won his start in the ALCS against the Tigers 1-0 behind Mike Napoli's 445-foot bomb, but nonetheless, look for Lackey to have another strong start against the St. Louis Cardinals. And last but not least, the number 4 starter for the team, Jake Peavy, who had a good start in the LCS or the LDS, had a bad start in the LCS, kind of the opposite of Lackey. He was very, very good against the Rays in Game 4 of the ALDS, but he just really, I don't know what it was against the Tigers. He's a very average pitcher. You're not really going to get too much from him. I think he kind of overhyped himself up. He hasn't pitched in the postseason since, I believe, 2006. And I think going up against the Tigers, an old division rival, I think he just psyched himself out a little bit. And I think he'll calm himself down back when comes Game 4. And I think he'll be fine. But we'll see. He's kind of the big question mark surrounding the staff at this point. But other than that, you have Dubron and Ryan Dempster. Both are coming out of the bullpen for now. They were both starters for the regular season up until the end. But they have been okay during the postseason of the bullpen. Dubron has said that he doesn't like coming out of the bullpen. But he's been successful so far. So, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But anyway, the Boston Red Sox, solid staff, not the best. And I'd say that the Cardinals probably have the edge in this sense, but I think it's going to be a pretty even matchup between both staffs. Now, the bullpen for the Boston Red Sox has really been their one major weakness throughout the regular season. However, during the postseason, they've been lights out, aside from Franklin Morales, who I can bet anything that we've seen the last of him for this October. They've been really lights out. Tanisha Tazawa has really stepped up. He led the AL in blown saves, I believe, or he was up there, maybe second. He was shaky during the regular season, but he stepped up in the postseason. He only allowed, I believe, 2 runs to the Detroit Tigers in the Game 5, but he still held the lead, and they still won that game 4-3, so it did not come back to cost them. He's also had a couple big outs against Miguel Cabrera, which is good, because now John Farrell, is probably going to, not hesitate to use him in big situations like that. He's got heat, he can throw 95-96, got a nice splitter, and he's been very good this postseason, so hopefully he keeps it up. The 8th inning man is usually Craig Breslow. He has emerged this season after being traded in the trade deadline last year for Matt Albers and Scott Podsednik. He's really emerged as the 8th inning man for this Boston Red Sox team. He's lefty, but don't let that fool you. He actually has a lower batting average against righties. His batting average against for righties is 208, lefties 253. So Breslow can really do it all, but he doesn't have overwhelming stuff. It's hard to figure out what this guy does right, but he's been successful. He's a Yale graduate. He's smart. Maybe that's what it is. Who knows? But he's been very successful, and I don't expect the Red Sox to mess with that this coming World Series. And then the 9th inning, in my opinion, probably the best closer in baseball, Koji Uehara. I mean, you look at the stats, he just recorded the lowest whip of all time for a minimum of 50 innings. He did not blow a single save since July. He went through an incredible streak where he retired 36 straight batters. He did have one shaky performance in the ALDS where he did blow the game. He didn't blow the save, but he allowed a walk-off home run in the ALDS Game 3. But he's been lights out since then. He's unhittable. The guy pounds the strike zone, has arguably the best splitter in baseball, and it's just amazing to watch the guy pitch. He's a fan favorite here in Boston, and I expect him to come out ready for this World Series. I really wouldn't expect to see anyone except those 3 guys in close game situations. If it's a 5 or 6 or 7 run lead for either team, you might see a Felix Dubron or a Ryan Dempster get in there. I think Brandon Workman's also going to see some increased innings. He's looked very good in the postseason so far. Has not a lot of run yet. Like I said, Franklin Morales, he's probably done. We don't really need the extra lefty, especially if Dubron can step up. And I'm not even sure if he's going to stay on the postseason roster, quite frankly. He has been that bad in this postseason. But nonetheless, I would expect to really see Tazawa, Breslow, and Uehara more than anyone else, especially. And really, you might almost see those guys exclusively from now on. For the Red Sox, it's been the offense that has carried them throughout the season. A very deep lineup. Something 6 or 7 of their 9 starters actually average the most pitches per scene out of their positions in the AL. So what that tells you is that they see pitches, they work counts, they get deep into starting pitchers' pitch counts, and then they get into the bullpen. They get into those weak parts of the bullpen, and they beat up on bad pitching. Now, the problem with that is, who's bad on the St. Louis Cardinals pitching staff? That's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe you get to Lance Lynn or Shelby Miller in Game 4. Maybe you can hit Joe Kelly in Game 3. Wainwright and Walker are going to be tough to hit in Games 1 and 2. And you get into the bullpen of the Cardinals, and I think you're going to have a tough time trying to do what you did against the Tigers. The Red Sox won 2 of their 4 games against the Tigers bullpen in that series. In the other 2 games, it took a miracle performance from John Lackey and then a nice solid performance in game 5, I should say, over the Detroit Tigers. But I think the Red Sox are going to struggle to try and find a weakness in this St. Louis pitching staff, and I think that's why their offense is going to struggle in this series. It's a very good offense. It's not very star-studded, and you can tell by the fact that the Red Sox only had 3 All-Stars this year. It's not a star-studded team. It's a lot of guys, a lot of B-plus guys that play like A-minus guys at times, and play like C-minus guys at other times. You take a Mike Napoli or Will Middlebrooks, those guys are streaky as hell. You take a Jacoby Ellsbury, he's been pretty solid throughout the year, but he can't do it on his own. He's not a big power guy. Same thing with Shane Victorino. Pedoria's been good throughout the year, but he's struggled so far in the postseason. Same thing with Ortiz. Although he's had a couple really big hits, he has struggled throughout the postseason, hitting sub like 200 at this point now. So, anyway, I'm glad that Xander Bogaerts looks like a regular starter from now on. I think that's the right way to go, especially over Will Middlebrooks or Steven Drew. Those guys have been very, very poor throughout the series so far, and Bogaerts adds life to the end of that lineup. He's an extremely disciplined 21-year-old. He can hit the ball hard, as proven by that double off of Max Scherzer in Game 6, right up the wall. Could have been a home run if he hit it 5 feet to the right, but nonetheless, just it's a deep lineup, but I think it's going to struggle this series. I think Saltalamacchia is going to struggle. He's a dead low ball hitter, and I think that the Cardinals will be able to work around that. Napoli, he's streaky, but he's probably not going to play when they get to St. Louis. I don't see them catching him, and for the first base, they're going to give it to David Ortiz. I guarantee it. So, that's 3 games where Mike Napoli might not be in the lineup at all. Maybe you'll see him come in as a pinch hitter, but that's 1 at-bat, maybe 2 if he stays in the game. So, we'll see what happens. I think the lineup's going to struggle. It's been a really good lineup throughout the year. They led the league in runs. They were phenomenal throughout the year. They used the wall. They used Fenway Park. It's kind of a hitter-friendly park in some areas. They used it effectively. And I think that they're just going to be a little bit outmatched, just like they were against the Detroit series. Now, that's not the end-all be-all because, as we saw, they were historically bad in the ALCS hitting-wise. Historically. But it didn't matter. They won the series in 6. So we'll see. The key for the Boston Red Sox this series has got to be their starting pitching. Look, I already said it. The Red Sox are going to struggle offensively, just as they did last series. But you know what? Their pitching was pretty good. Buchholz pitched okay. Lester was phenomenal. Lackey was phenomenal. Peavy struggled, and that was the game they lost. I think that they're going to have to get really, really good starting pitching. They're going to have Lackey do what he did in Game 3. Maybe he can do a little bit worse, but, he's likely going to be matched up against Michael Wacha, and we've all seen how good that guy's been so far. Lester, he's going to be Lester. He's been phenomenal so far. I expect that to continue. But then it's going to be Buchholz and Peavy that are really going to have to step up. If those guys can outpitch Shelby Miller, Lance Lynn, and Joe Kelly, whatever combination of those guys the Cardinals decide to use, then I think the Red Sox are in good shape. But I don't know if they can. Peavy has really been adequate, I would say, throughout the entire season. Buchholz, as I said, he was really good to start out the year, but he hasn't built back his arm strength since his injury. So he's likely not going to give you more than 85 pitches. So in my opinion, it's on Lester and Lackey to keep it up, Buchholz and Peavy to step up, and the bullpen to keep doing what they're doing if the Red Sox want to win this series. For St. Louis, I think all they have to do is stay solid. I think that they're a very bad matchup for this Red Sox team. Now, I know I'm usually a pessimistic Red Sox fan, but look what the Red Sox do so well. It's kind of get into the nitty-gritty parts of that St. Louis pitching staff. St. Louis doesn't have a lot of weak pitchers. I think if those guys can stay solid and you don't have any weak links throughout that pitching staff, I think the Cardinals are golden because I think they're going to hit. I think they're going to knock around some of these Red Sox starters, and I think that they're going to do enough offensively to get it done. It's going to be on their pitching to win this World Series. Now, my final opinions on both teams, look, they're both extremely, extremely solid teams. They don't have a lot of weaknesses, at least none that have shown up so far in the postseason. Although you can look at the Red Sox offense as one, I think they're going to hit. I think they can hit. I don't think that's a weakness. I think they just got outpitched. I think that you look at that starting pitching on the Detroit Tigers, that's probably one of the, you could say that's the best set of 3 pitchers in baseball. So I don't think it's a team with a lot of weaknesses. The Cardinals, I haven't followed them too closely, but from what I've seen, it's just a solid team that goes under the radar every single year. And it's like, whoa, these guys are in the World Series again. It's it is the best organization in baseball at this point. It is incredible. It's mostly homegrown talent. The talent that they do find outside of their own organization, it's the Matt Hollidays and the Carlos Beltrons of the world. It's like, where do you find these guys? It's just incredible. And I think that it's a very, very solid, strong team. I don't see either team with a ton of weaknesses. I think it's a joint opinion on both of them. They're just solid teams. Really good offenses, solid starting pitching, not a lot of big names in those rotations, but they get the job done. Good bullpens, at least for the Red Sox, it's performed in the postseason. And we'll see. I think that both teams have some advantages. I think the Cardinals are going to get Alan Craig back. That's going to be big for them. But I think the Red Sox also playing in the NL parks. I think an AL team, when they go to an NL park, that's a huge advantage for the AL team. These starting pitchers are used to facing 9 hitters in a lineup. They're going to be facing 8. It's a huge difference. It's almost a free out every inning. That's a really big difference. Now, I know the Cardinals get their own free out with Steven Drew coming up once every 3 innings, but still, I mean, I think that's a big difference for AL pitchers. So, in my opinion, both solid teams, and there's really nothing much else to it. So, for my final prediction, look, I bet against this team time and time again, and I've been proven wrong time and time again. It might just be time for me to start believing in this Red Sox team. They've done it enough. Do you remember the game in August when they came back against the Mariners down 7-2 in the 9th? That was incredible. They did it only making 1 out in the inning. Look, it's hard to bet against this team. A certain aspect of it feels like it's unbeatable. I was at game 2. I counted them out. They were down 5-0. Max Scherzer was on the mound. It's unbelievable what this team can do sometimes. And it's a very hard team to bet against. Because no matter how far down they get, no matter how bad it looks, they just keep coming back. And as Fred Toucher said on Toucher and Rich one morning, it's almost like they're unbeatable. It's hard to believe what they've done this season. But I really do think they finally met their match. I mean, give me one weakness in this St. Louis team. That's what I thought. I mean, it's incredible. This team has no weaknesses, and it's an organization that's been here, and it's done that. They were in the World Series 2 years ago. They won it 2 years ago. And it's a team with the same kind of mantra. You can't count them out. They were down to their last strike twice in that series, and they won it in 7. It's a hard team to count out. And it's going to be a really, really tough series for both teams. It's going to go 6 or 7 games. But you know what? I'm going to take the Cardinals. I think they're going to do it in 6. All right, on to Max's portion of the podcast. We're going to let him speak about the St. Louis Cardinals for a little bit, and I'll get back to you later.
Thank you, and what is up, YouTube? This is RizeAboveGaming here. I have my own channel. You can check it out at youtube.com/RizeAboveGaming. On my channel, I do NBA 2K14 stuff, but I'm also a huge fan of baseball. I would love to do MLB videos, but of course, I only have an Xbox, so there's no real game to play for that. But alright, let's get started with this World Series preview podcast. Alright, so the St. Louis Cardinals had a somewhat good start to 2013. They did finish April 1st in the NL Central, finishing the month with a 15-11 record. And when it came to May, there was some good and there was some bad. They lost their closer Jason Mott for the season due to injury, and then that was when Michael Wacha became called up. We all know who Michael Wacha is now. In June, the only real highlight from June 2013 was David Freese with his 20-game hit streak. And when it came to July, the Cardinals had 5 All-Star selections. And in August, the Cardinals finally took over first place from the Pirates, and they acquired John Axford from the Brewers to replace Jason Mott. When it came to September, on September 22nd, the Cardinals clinched their playoff spot. They clinched the NL Central on September 27th, and in between there, Michael Wacha had his near no-hitter. And now, the 2013 season overall, they finished 97-65, and they finished off the month of September with 19-8, and they were gaining a lot of momentum at the end, with Michael Wacha just starting to find out who he was, and at the perfect time. And when it came to the postseason, leading into it, in the NLDS, they won 3-2 over the Pirates, taking games 1, 4, and 5, and in the NLCS, they won the series in 6 over the Dodgers. And we all remember Game 1, which went 13 innings. The St. Louis Cardinals, for the St. Louis Cardinals, when it comes to their offense, in the regular season they finished 3rd in runs, 4th in batting average, 3rd in on-base percentage, and 12th in slugging percentage. So their offense was very high-powered. They were able to score runs. They were able to get them in. They were able to get on base well. Their defense, they had a .988 fielding percentage. They averaged 1 error every 2 games and 3 double plays a game. So they were able to cover the infield really well when it came to their defense. Now the starting pitchers, the 4 main starting pitchers for the Cardinals during this postseason have been Joe Kelly, Michael Wacha, Adam Wainwright, and Lance Lynn. Now, Joe Kelly, in the regular season, had a .269 ERA. He went 10-5 and 79 strikeouts. Michael Wacha, he didn't really start pitching a lot until the end of the season, because he wasn't called up until the end of May. But in the times that he did pitch, he had a .278 ERA, went 4-1 with 65 strikeouts. And now the highlight of the rotation, Adam Wainwright. He had a 2.94 ERA, went 19-9, and 219 strikeouts. And also Lance Lynn really helped contribute to the cause. His ERA wasn't as good as everybody else, but it was still a 3.97. He went 15-10 and had 198 strikeouts. So you can definitely say that this starting rotation is good. Wainwright and Lance Lynn in the front, along with Michael Wacha, who's been a really powerful young gun. Those three guys can easily lead them to wins throughout this series. And for the bullpen, for when it came to the Cardinals, during the regular season they had 44 saves, 83 holds, and currently the past couple games Trevor Rosenthal has been their closer. And in the regular season he had a 2.63 ERA with 108 strikeouts. This bullpen, they're shaky because their original closer, he did not finish off the season well. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he definitely did not finish this season well because he was blowing saves left and right, and then they finally just pulled the cord on him. The St. Louis Cardinals, their lineup has been really good this entire season. At first base, they've had Mike Adams, who has a 2.84 average with 17 home runs, 51 RBIs, scored 46 runs, got walked 23 times, had a 3.35 on-base percentage, and a 5.03 slugging. He was one of the guys who had power, but he wasn't really able to show it that well. But he could still get you on base, and he still could help you score a lot of runs. Now, at second base, they had Matt Carpenter, who he was able to get on base a lot, but he did not have a lot of power behind him. But with a 3.18 average and 126 runs scored, he was really good. He had some power, but not as much as the rest of the guys, with only 11 home runs throughout the year, but also driving in 78 runs. He walked 72 times, had a 3.92 on base percentage, and a 4.81 slugging. Now, when it came to third base, we all remember this guy from the Cardinals' last World Series. We all remember David Freese. He's not been having that good of a year this year. He's not the worst batter in the lineup right now, but he's somewhat there. I mean, he has a 2.62 average, only 9 long balls, 60 runs batted in, 53 runs scored, 47 walks, a 3.40 on base percentage, and a 3.81 slugging percentage. Now, Pete Kozma at shortstop. That's probably the weakest spot of the Cardinals lineup, and I wouldn't say infield, but because the infield all around is pretty good, but Pete Kozma had a 2.17 average, 1 home run, 35 runs batted in, 44 scored runs. He was walked 34 times, only had a 2.75 on base percentage, and his slugging percentage was 2.73, worse than his on base percentage. And now we're going to be talking about probably the heart and soul of the Cardinals right here, the outfield. Their outfield, they're able to produce runs, they're able to save stuff, and starting off with left fielder Matt Holliday. He had a 300 average in the regular season, hit 22 long balls, 94 runs batted in, scored 103 runs, walked 69 times, had a 3.89 on base percentage, and a 4.90 slugging percentage. Now, center fielder John Jay, he wasn't the best outfielder, but he was still an outfielder. He had a 2.76 average with 7 home runs, 67 runs batted in, scored 75 runs, 52 walks, a 3.51 on base percentage, and a 3.70 slugging percentage. Now, probably the best player on all the Cardinals, right fielder Carlos Beltran. He had a 2.96 average, hit 24 home runs. He was definitely the powerhouse of the team. He had 48 runs batted in, 79 runs scored. He was only walked 38 times. He had a 3.39 on base percentage and a 4.91 slugging percentage. And now catcher Yadier Molina. He had a 3.19 average throughout the year, 12 home runs, 80 runs batted in, 68 runs scored, 30 walks. He had a 3.59 on base percentage and a 4.77 slugging percentage. So this team, they were able to hit the long ball. They were able to get runs in. They could get on base, and they were able to produce. This is going to be something the Red Sox are going to really want to watch out for when it comes World Series time. If the St. Louis Cardinals do want to walk away victors and call themselves 2013 World Series champions, they need Michael Wacha to be perfect. They need Adam Wainwright to be perfect. They need every single starter and every single pitcher to be perfect when it comes out. Because if you make one mistake as this team, they can really make you pay for it. You saw that with Shane Victorino's grand slam. He was 2 for 26 going into it, but if as a pitcher you make one mistake against any of these batters, they will show you never to do that again. And And there are people other than Beltran and Holiday that need to supply the power if they want to win this World Series. You can't rely just on two guys. Like, you really need the 2011 David Freese to come alive right now. He really needs to make a name for himself yet again. And if they can do that, the St. Louis Cardinals, they can win this World Series, and there is also a very realistic chance that they will win this series. If the Boston Red Sox want to be considered one of the greatest turnarounds in MLB history and win this World Series this year, they need to be inconsistent. They can't be as shaky as they were sometimes during the year, and they need to show up every night in every game. The back end of the rotation needs to be just as good as the first half. The infield, they need to play well. They need to convert. They need to convert on ground balls, double plays, all that stuff. And the batting, they need to go out there and just continue to keep doing what they're doing, because it seems like they have a winning rotation, and they will really know what they will be able to do when it comes time for the World Series and to be able to take home that trophy. However, when it does come to the Boston Red Sox, this team, they're playing for a lot. For a team last year that had a collapse worse than the fall of Rome in September, they knew how to turn it around, and they did that quick. This lineup has power from top to bottom, and they can cover the field well. The rotation can be inconsistent, but they'll get the job done. Boston, it's a really good team. They really know what they're doing, and they're also playing for the entire city of Boston. After the bombings earlier this season, this team has put their heart and soul into this ball club, and they've given the city a reason to stand up again and forget the problems from earlier in the year. So they're fighting for that Boston strong. Able to get out there, and they can be able to put a fight up with the Sox. However, when it does come to the Boston Red Sox, this team, they're playing for a lot. For a team last year that had a collapse worse than the fall of Rome in September, they knew how to turn it around, and they did that quick. This lineup has power from top to bottom, and they can cover the field well. The rotation can be inconsistent, but they'll get the job done. Boston, it's a really good team. They really know what they're doing, and they're also playing for the entire city of Boston. After the bombings earlier this season, this team has put their heart and soul into this ball club, and they've given the city a reason to stand up again and forget the problems from earlier in the year. So they're fighting for that Boston strong. This World Series will be long, hard, and challenging for both teams. The Boston Red Sox, they're playing for a lot. They're playing for a lot. And the St. Louis Cardinals, they have a lot to show in this World Series. But both teams, it's going to be a long struggle, but personally, I have the Boston Red Sox in 6 games over the St. Louis Cardinals.
Alright, thanks, Max. Like I said, this channel description is going to be in the link, or this channel link is going to be in the description below. Jumbled my words there. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the podcast. Let me know what you guys think of the World Series. It's going to be a phenomenal series. I mean, I thought the ALCS was one of the best series of baseball I've ever watched, and I think the World Series might just top it. So anyway, that's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you did enjoy. Those out. Peace.